Every morning presents two choices: to be ruled by fear or to be anchored in faith. The way you start your day determines the direction of your life. Psalm 27 is not just a passage, it is a declaration, a spiritual armor, a guide that fortifies your heart before the battles of the day even begin. This psalm, written by David, is a proclamation of trust, confidence, and unyielding faith in God's power. Today, I want to share 8 key principles from Psalm 27 that will shape your mornings, strengthen your faith, and empower you to walk with divine confidence every single day. Confidence in the Lord as your light, David begins with a profound declaration: "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" This is not a question. It is a challenge to every fear, every doubt, and every insecurity that tries to creep in at the break of dawn. Light represents guidance, revelation, and truth. When God is your light, confusion is dispelled and clarity is established. Light has always been a symbol of direction. In darkness, everything seems uncertain and movement becomes hesitant. But when light is present, obstacles become visible and the path ahead is clear. David acknowledges that the Lord is not just any light, He is His light. This is personal. He does not rely on external sources to guide his life. His source of illumination is the Almighty, the one who spoke light into existence. Starting the day by acknowledging that God is your light means stepping into the day with confidence that no matter what happens, divine wisdom will lead you. There are moments when life presents difficult decisions and the path forward seems clouded by uncertainty. Many rely on personal intellect, advice from others, or even societal trends to guide their choices. But David reminds us that true clarity comes when God is our light. Think about a traveler lost in the wilderness at night. Without light, every step is a risk. The terrain is unknown, and danger lurks in every shadow. But with light, fear dissipates. The traveler sees the road ahead, the pitfalls to avoid, and the destination in sight. That is what God's light does for us. It illuminates our path so that we do not stumble. Many people wake up and immediately check their phones, social media, or the news, allowing external voices to dictate the course of their day. Instead of filling their hearts with divine wisdom, they are consumed by fear, worry, and the chaos of the world. But those who start their morning with Psalm 27 declare that God's truth will be their first influence, their guiding force, and their anchor. The light of God does more than guide, it exposes. When God is your light, deception cannot thrive. The enemy operates in darkness, using lies and confusion to manipulate emotions and decisions. But when a believer walks in divine light, they discern truth from falsehood, right from wrong, and wisdom from folly. Salvation is tied to this light. The Lord is my light and my salvation. This means that deliverance, breakthrough, and rescue come through divine illumination. Those who walk in darkness live in fear of the unknown, but those who have God as their light are assured of victory. The strength to overcome fear, Psalm 27:1 continues, "The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Fear paralyzes. It makes people hesitate when they should advance. It keeps dreams locked away and destinies unfulfilled. David, a man who faced lions, bears, and giants, understood that fear was an obstacle to his purpose, yet he made a decision. The Lord is my stronghold. This means God is his defense, his fortress, and his protector. Fear is a universal experience. It affects people of all ages, backgrounds, and circumstances. It manifests in different ways: fear of failure, rejection, uncertainty, or even success. Many are afraid to step out of their comfort zones, afraid to trust God fully, or afraid of what the future holds. But David declares that fear has no power over him because God is his stronghold. A stronghold is a place of security, a fortified refuge where the enemy cannot penetrate. In ancient times, strongholds were built to withstand attacks. They were strategically placed on high ground, making them difficult for invaders to breach. David compares God to such a stronghold, emphasizing that those who trust in him are not vulnerable to the enemy's schemes. Starting the day with the awareness that God is your stronghold shifts your mindset. Instead of waking up dreading challenges, you wake up with, the confidence that no opposition can shake you. Many enter the day anxious about financial difficulties, health concerns, or relational conflicts, but when God is your stronghold, you understand that no battle is fought alone. Consider a soldier who enters war without a fortified base. He is exposed, vulnerable, and constantly on edge. But a soldier with a stronghold knows that no matter how fierce the battle, there is a place of refuge. That is what God offers, security in the midst of uncertainty. Fear loses its power when faith is activated. Fear and faith cannot coexist. One will always overpower the other. When faith is weak, fear thrives. But when faith is strong, fear is silenced. David's declaration is not just poetic, it is a battle strategy. He knows that if he acknowledges God as his protector, no enemy, no threat, and no challenge can break him. Fear often distorts reality. It magnifies problems, making them appear insurmountable. But faith restores perspective. David chooses to magnify God instead of his problems. He does not deny the existence of danger, but he refuses to allow it to control him. Many people wake up already defeated in their minds. They anticipate struggles and setbacks before they even begin their day. But those who declare, "The Lord is my stronghold," shift from a mindset of defeat to a posture of victory. Fear will always attempt to creep in. It will whisper lies, plant seeds of doubt, and cause hesitation. But when a believer starts the day rooted in Psalm 27, fear has no foothold. They walk with boldness, knowing that the God of the universe is their protector, their shield, and their refuge, seeking the presence of God above all else. David's heart was after one thing above all else, God's presence. Psalm 27:04 states, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." This was not a casual request. It was the deepest longing of his soul. David had everything, power, wealth, victories, but none of it compared to the joy of being in the presence of God. Many people wake up every morning seeking success, approval, financial breakthroughs, or solutions to their problems. They run after achievements and earthly desires, believing that these things will bring them peace and satisfaction. But David's priority was different. He knew that when he sought God first, everything else would fall into place. Seeking God's presence means intentionally setting aside time to be with him. This is not a rushed prayer or a quick verse read before heading into a busy schedule. It is a deliberate pursuit, a hunger for communion with God. The greatest victories in life do not come from human effort alone. They come from dwelling in God's presence. When Moses spent time with God on Mount Sinai, his face radiated with glory. When the disciples spent time with Jesus, they were empowered to transform the world. The presence of God changes everything. In a world filled with distractions, seeking God requires discipline. Phones, social media, news, and daily responsibilities can easily take priority over time with God. But when we wake up and seek him first, we align our hearts with his will. Just as the body needs food to function, the spirit needs God's presence to thrive. A life without his presence is spiritually malnourished. David also speaks of gazing on the beauty of the Lord. This means fixing our eyes on God's character, his goodness, his faithfulness. When troubles arise, it is easy to focus on the problem rather than the problem solver. But when we behold God's beauty, anxiety loses its grip. A heart that meditates on God's greatness will not be shaken by life's uncertainties. Dwelling in the house of the Lord, David did not just want to visit God's presence occasionally. He wanted to dwell there. To dwell means to remain, to abide, to make it a permanent home. Many people seek God in moments of crisis, but as soon as the storm passes, they drift away. But David's desire was to make God's presence his home. Dwelling in God's house is more than attending a church service once a week. It is a lifestyle of constant communion with him. Jesus said in John 15:04, "Abide in me, and I will abide in you." This means that his presence is not confined to a building. It is a continuous relationship. Whether in the workplace, at home, or in moments of solitude, a person who dwells in God's presence carries an atmosphere of peace and strength wherever they go. Imagine a person who builds a house in a place of security versus someone who only seeks shelter when storms come. The one who builds his home in a safe place is always protected, while the one who runs only during trouble remains vulnerable. The house of the Lord is not just a physical place. It is a spiritual stronghold. Those who dwell there are covered under God's protection at all times. David also mentions seeking him in his temple. The temple represents a sacred place of worship, a place where distractions fade and God becomes the sole focus. In today's world, this means setting apart time and space for undivided attention to God. It is in these moments of stillness that His voice is heard most clearly. The desire to dwell in God's house reflects a heart that is not content with temporary encounters, but craves a continuous relationship. This is the key to spiritual maturity. Many people struggle with inconsistency in their faith because they visit God rather than live with Him. David understood that true strength, true wisdom, and true peace come from abiding in God's presence daily. A person who dwells in God's presence does not fear what the day holds because they know who holds the day. They do not waver in uncertainty because their foundation is unshakable. The storms of life may come, but they remain standing because their roots go deep in God's presence. The invitation to dwell in God's house is open to everyone. It is not reserved for the spiritually elite. It is a call for all who desire a deeper walk with God. Every morning presents a choice to step into the day alone or to step into the day dwelling in God's presence. Those who choose to dwell will experience unshakable peace, divine strength, and the assurance that they are never alone. Trusting God's protection in times of trouble, David declares in Psalm 27:5, "For in the day of trouble He will keep me safe in His dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of His sacred tent and set me high upon a rock." These words reflect the unwavering trust he had in God's protection. He did not say trouble would never come. He acknowledged that difficulties would arise. However, he was confident that God would provide refuge. Trusting in God's protection means recognizing that security does not come from external circumstances, but from His presence. Many place their trust in financial stability, health, relationships, or personal strength, but these can all be shaken. God's protection is different. It is steadfast and immovable. When David faced threats from enemies, he did not panic. He ran to God as his stronghold. A shelter is a place of safety, a covering that keeps one from harm. In ancient times, strongholds were fortified places where people sought refuge from attacks. God's presence is the ultimate stronghold. He shields His children from dangers, seen and unseen. This does not mean believers will never face challenges, but it assures them that no trial will overtake them without God's provision. The imagery of being set high upon a rock speaks of stability. A rock is a firm foundation, unaffected by storms. Jesus reinforced this concept in Matthew 7:24-25 when He spoke of the wise man who built his house upon the rock. Those who place their trust in God's protection will not be easily shaken by life's trials. When storms come, they will remain standing. Stories of divine protection fill the Bible. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, but God shut the mouths of the lions. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were cast into the fiery furnace, yet they walked out unharmed because God was with them. Paul faced shipwrecks and persecution, yet he continued his mission because he knew God was his protector. Every morning, believers must remind themselves that their safety is in God. Instead of starting the day with worry about what might go wrong, they should begin with a declaration of faith. God is my refuge. He will keep me safe. This mindset shifts the focus from fear to faith. It reminds them that no matter what the day brings, God's hand is upon them. When people forget that God is their protector, anxiety takes over. They begin to rely on their own strength and become overwhelmed by life's uncertainties. But when they acknowledge His protection, peace follows. This peace surpasses understanding because it is not based on human reasoning, but on divine assurance. Seeking God's protection requires surrender. It means laying down self-sufficiency and placing full confidence in Him. Many times, people struggle because they try to control everything themselves. True security comes when they release their grip and trust that God is in control. This is the essence of faith, believing that even in the midst of trials, God is working for their good. Those who trust in God's protection can walk boldly into each day. They do not need to live in fear of the unknown. They can rest in the truth that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. As Psalm 91:1 states, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." The safest place to be is under God's covering. Lifting up a song of praise in the midst of the battle, Psalm 27:6 says, "Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord." David understood the power of worship even in the face of adversity. Worship is not just an act of gratitude when things are going well. It is a weapon against despair, a declaration of victory before the battle is won. Singing in the midst of the battle is a demonstration of faith. It shifts focus from the problem to the problem solver. Many people allow challenges to silence their praise, but David shows that worship should not be dependent on circumstances. When he was on the run from King Saul, he continued to sing to the Lord. When he faced betrayal, he still lifted up songs of praise. His worship was not a response to victory. It was a declaration of trust in God. Paul and Silas exemplified this truth in Acts 16. After being beaten and imprisoned, they did not sit in despair. Instead, they prayed and sang hymns to God. Their worship shook the foundations of the prison, causing chains to break and doors to open. This illustrates the supernatural power of praise. When believers worship in times of difficulty, they invite God's presence to move in their situation. Praise is not just a spiritual exercise. It has psychological and emotional benefits. Studies show that gratitude and worship can reduce stress, improve mental health, and increase resilience. When people choose to praise God, they shift their mindset from fear to faith. Instead of dwelling on problems, they magnify God's goodness. David describes offering sacrifices of joy. In biblical times, sacrifices were an act of devotion. Offering a sacrifice of praise means worshiping even when it is difficult. It is easy to praise God when everything is going well, but true faith is displayed when people worship through pain, uncertainty, and trials. This kind of praise is powerful because it is rooted in trust rather than emotions. Music and worship create an atmosphere where God's presence dwells. Psalm 22:03 states that God inhabits the praises of his people. When believers begin their day with praise, they set the tone for victory. Instead of carrying the weight of worries, they enter the day filled with joy and strength. A lifestyle of worship transforms how people face challenges. Instead of reacting with fear, they respond with faith. Instead of retreating in discouragement, they press forward in confidence. Every battle faced is an opportunity to lift up a song of praise and declare that God is greater than any obstacle. Crying out to God with confidence, David writes in Psalm 27:7, "Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me." This verse reveals the urgency and desperation with which David seeks God. His cry is not one of doubt, but of faith, knowing that God hears and responds. Calling out to God is not a sign of weakness. It is an acknowledgement of divine dependence. True strength lies in recognizing that human efforts are limited, but God's power is infinite. Throughout Scripture, there are countless examples of men and women who cried out to God in their distress and were met with his intervention. The Israelites enslaved in Egypt cried out, and God sent Moses to lead them to freedom. Hannah, in deep sorrow over her barrenness, poured out her heart, and God granted her a son, Samuel. Blind Bartimaeus, sitting by the roadside, refused to be silenced when he heard that Jesus was passing by. His persistent cry, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me," led to his miraculous healing. Crying out to God is an act of surrender. It requires setting aside pride and admitting the need for divine help. Many struggle in silence, believing they must handle everything on their own. However, God invites his children to call upon him. He promises in Jeremiah 33:3, "Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not." There is power in vocalizing prayers. Speaking aloud strengthens faith, just as speaking fear can weaken it. Words have the ability to shape reality. When believers cry out in faith, they are aligning their words with God's promises rather than their problems. This is why David did not just think about his needs, he expressed them boldly before the Lord. Crying out to God should not only happen in times of distress. A consistent prayer life builds intimacy with God. Many wait until they are overwhelmed before seeking Him, but daily communication fosters a deeper relationship. Just as a child speaks openly to a loving parent, believers should speak to God with confidence, knowing He listens. Prayer is not just about requesting help. It is about experiencing the presence of God. It is in these moments of crying out that people encounter peace beyond understanding. When fears are spoken before God, He replaces them with His assurance. When burdens are laid at His feet, He exchanges them for His strength. The enemy often tries to silence believers, making them feel as though their prayers go unheard, but God assures His children that He is near to the brokenhearted and attentive to their cries. Silence is the enemy's weapon, but faith-filled prayer is the believer's defense. Crying out to God is a declaration that no matter how difficult the situation, He is still sovereign. Every morning should begin with a cry of faith, a declaration that God is in control, that He is present, and that He is working all things for good. Speaking to God with boldness sets the foundation for a victorious day, reinforcing the truth that He never leaves nor forsakes those who trust in Him. Waiting on the Lord with expectation. Psalm 27:14 declares, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." Waiting is one of the hardest disciplines of faith. In a world that values speed and instant results, waiting feels like wasted time. However, biblical waiting is not passive. It is an active trust in God's perfect timing. David understood the power of waiting. He had been anointed as king, yet he spent years running from Saul before taking the throne. In that waiting period, his faith was refined. He learned to depend on God's provision rather than his own strength. The waiting was not a delay in his destiny. It was preparation for it. Waiting on God requires faith. It means believing that even when things seem stagnant, God is working behind the scenes. Joseph waited years in prison before stepping into his God-ordained role as Egypt's ruler. Abraham waited decades for the fulfillment of God's promise that he would have a son. Waiting is never wasted when it is done in trust. Impatience can lead to wrong decisions. Many times people rush ahead of God's plan and face unnecessary struggles. Sarah and Abraham, tired of waiting, tried to fulfill God's promise through Hagar, leading to conflict. Saul, unwilling to wait for Samuel, offered a sacrifice in disobedience, costing him his kingdom. Moving outside of God's timing often leads to hardship. Waiting is an act of surrender. It acknowledges that God's ways are higher and His timing is perfect. It is in waiting that faith is strengthened. Isaiah 40:31 promises, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Waiting produces endurance and spiritual resilience. Waiting should be done with expectation, not frustration. The posture of waiting matters. Those who wait with doubt struggle, but those who wait with expectation see God move. A farmer plants seeds and waits, knowing the harvest will come. He does not dig up the soil every day in impatience. Similarly, believers must plant their prayers in faith and wait, knowing God will bring the harvest at the right time. Waiting also refines motives. It exposes whether trust is in the blessing or in the one who blesses. God often withholds certain things to deepen faith, ensuring that devotion is to Him alone. When believers learn to be content in the waiting, they step into greater spiritual maturity. Each morning is an opportunity to practice waiting on the Lord. Before rushing into the day's demands, pausing to seek Him sets the right foundation. Those who wait on God enter their day with clarity, strength, and divine direction. Rather than being driven by urgency, they are led by His Spirit. Waiting is not a delay in destiny, it is a divine process of preparation. Those who trust in God's timing never miss out on His best. As David reminds us, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Psalm 27 is more than just words on a page. It is a blueprint for a victorious life. When embraced fully, it transforms the way you approach every single day. Confidence in the Lord eliminates fear. Seeking His presence brings unshakable peace. Dwelling in His house secures your foundation. Trusting in His protection shields you from the storms of life. Lifting up praise strengthens your spirit. Crying out to Him aligns your heart with His will. Waiting on Him renews your strength. This psalm is a daily reminder that no matter what happens in the world, God remains steadfast. The trials of life may come, but those who stand upon the truths of Psalm 27 will never be shaken. The challenges may seem overwhelming, but God is greater. The world may try to instill fear, but faith in God casts it out. Each morning, before stepping into the uncertainties of the day, declare these words over your life. Speak them with boldness, live them with conviction. Let Psalm 27 shape your mindset, fuel your faith, and guide your actions. When you walk in the confidence of this psalm, you walk in victory. No weapon formed against you will prosper. No darkness will overtake you. No storm will break you. For the Lord is your light, your salvation, and the stronghold of your life. Stand firm, walk boldly, trust unwaveringly, and start every day with Psalm 27 as your anthem of faith.